Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Adamson. I'm the chairman of Forum Europe. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this interactive workshop, Accelerating the Transition to a Digital Economy. Let me briefly set out the store for this morning's discussion, and then I'll explain some of the highlights of the program and some of the logistics. So, as we all know, as Europe is realizing and further enhancing its highly ambitious plans for a green and smart digital economy, the global pandemic is adding complexity as well as opportunity in this transition. The case for a digitally driven economic recovery is more compelling than ever, but the key strengths and weaknesses of European member states' individual digital economy archetypes are different. This means that whilst a coordinated strategy to the delivery of an overarching policy framework is important, a one-size-fits-all path for member states across Europe looking to digitalize is not the best approach. This interactive workshop will examine these ideas and look at how member states can best develop a digital transformation tailored to their specific needs. We're going to proceed as follows. I will shortly introduce Kurt Baas, who's a partner at Arthur D. Little, who will make a presentation based on a report that his organization produced back in July in the summer called Think Differently, Think Archetype, Your Digital Economy Model. And then I'll have the pleasure of inviting our two keynote speakers to address us. So enough from me. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Kurt. Over to you, Kurt.
Thank you, Paul. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to present to you today a novel approach to digital transformation and policy reform. We at Arthur D. Little are convinced that improving digital infrastructure should be central to regional and national ICT policy, possibly even more here in the European context, where both the EU level and the country-specific situations come into play. This is one of the key questions for the EU institutions, which you can see here behind me in the background. If we go to the next slide, in fact, overall, digital economy is gaining importance for improving the country competitiveness, and it's growing 3 times faster than GDP. It's contributing 5% of the economy and 15%, combined 20% directly and indirectly. Successful digital economies actually require a whole range of infrastructure and capabilities, but countries often have scarce resources and finite funds, especially having supported in a COVID-19 context other sectors and other sub-economy parts. Choosing and prioritizing focus areas really is key. Therefore, I first want to share our definition of country archetypes, designed to act as a reference model that countries can adapt when they're actually defining, assessing their situation and defining their future strategy. If you go to the next page, on this slide, you can see the different archetypes that we distinguish. At the top, you see the value chain. Just below, you see the value pool. The biggest share is on the upstream side. In tech design and product development, it's more than 50%. Then production at about 25%. Then trade about 15%, and finally consumption at about 10%. It is exactly those value pools that digital economies want to access. Let me focus on a few of them, and you can find the full report with the explanation of the archetypes on both Huawei's and Arthur D. Little's website. If I take the number one, the innovation hub, countries in this archetype, they're capturing the highest value from the ICT industry, as you can see in the numbers. They're the leaders in conceptualizing and developing new technologies, and in commercializing innovative solutions based on them. They're home to global digital giants, and they can foster technology-based startups. It's countries like US, Sweden, or South Korea that are matching this archetype. The number two is efficient prosumer. A good example of this one is Germany. Strong niche players that innovate and deploy solutions for dominant local industries. They're focusing their efforts on developing technology solutions that will enhance competitiveness of a single or a few economic sectors within the countries. Back to the German example, heavily invested in digitalizing manufacturing, including automotive and machine building sectors. Another interesting example is number 6, the ICT patron, which is based on an overall strategy that empowers the nation and improves the competitiveness of key economic sectors by effective use of ICT. Bulgaria is an interesting example, with 6% of GDP contributed by the ICT industry. If we're moving to the next page, you can see that one size does not fit all when it comes to digital policies. Every country is unique and can be characterized by a distinct set of national digital traits. And then the policymakers need to formulate policies, laws, and regulations across 4 interrelated dimensions. You can see them on the left here: technology, ecosystem, capability, and industry, corresponding to the archetype of the respective country. I cannot go through an assessment of all key policy areas now, but as you can see on the screen, specific policies are critical, like the ones in green, or nice to have, like the ones in orange, depending on the archetype. I take 2 examples. Germany, the Industry 4.0 initiatives are known throughout the world with a vision defined early on. There's more than 400 digital excellence centers that were set up. There's a 2 billion government-backed VC fund for technology startups. Other example, Denmark, ICT patron in the one but last column on the right. Denmark, for instance, is renowned for its digital health strategy. It was defined in 2017-18, covers 18 to 22 period. Achievements to date include 94% of citizens are active users of online services, and digital technology is widely employed in private as well as public sector. Telehealth, for instance, has reduced the number and the length of hospitalization by 11 and 20% respectively. The key takeaway is that not all policies contribute to the archetype, so countries better select and prioritize the right ones for maximum impact. On the next page, and that's my last page for this setting the scene part, is that, of course, this story is not static. Finally, policies should, of course, think forward. What's next? Transitioning to another archetype through specific policy choices is, in fact, what some call strategic master moves. And some transitions are more manageable than others. As you can see here on the slide, we tried to map how you could migrate from an existing archetype to another one. So from the left column to the top row. A little illustration, for instance, business hubs like Singapore have quite some strategic freedom to develop into another archetype. There's others like the Global Factory, a good example is Mexico, or ICT Novice. Those are facing a much more challenging path towards other archetypes. We've set the scene now to hear European and country perspectives on the digital economy and how choosing the right policy is a high-tech decision process for creating wealth in countries at large.
Okay, thank you very much, Kurt. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. Well, as we all know, the digital transition was a key plank of the van der Leyen Commission even before the pandemic, and with the pandemic, and now since the pandemic, even more so. So what, based on your study and your research, what do you think would be the strategic takeaway for EU policymakers here in Brussels?
Well, especially for the policymakers, there's a Europe-specific question, which is the portfolio effect. I've talked about strategic master moves.
What does that mean?
How could at the EU level actually there be a guidance to combine multiple archetypes and even come out stronger as a European level? It's probably the key question for the policymakers here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We have to move on. We'll be back later on, and food for thought. Thank you very much for your presentation, Kurt. Before I introduce our first keynote speaker, let me just remind everybody watching that there's a chat function if you want to pose questions to anybody as of now, and the keynote speakers and the panelists later on in the program, and simply use the chat function at the right-hand side of your screen. And also there's a hashtag, which I was remiss in not mentioning before, hashtag digital archetypes, if you want to use social media as part of this discussion. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce Patrick Breen. Patrick is the former Irish Minister for Trade, Employment, Business, EU Digital Single Market and Data Protection. We look forward to your presentation and keynote address, Patrick, and then we'll have a conversation. Over to you, Patrick.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and good morning, everybody. First of all, thank Forum Europe for their kind invitation to make the keynote address here this morning at this, I believe, a very important workshop on a subject, I suppose, as an outgoing minister in the Irish government that I worked very closely on over the last 4 years. And Paul, thank you very much for your introduction. Can I say to you, I suppose my work as Minister for Business, Trade, Employment, EU Single Digital Market and Data Protection was very much focused on the digital agenda and the promotion of Ireland abroad as a progressive, innovative place to live, to work and do business. It's a crucial time for all of us in the European Union now as the UK exits the European Union. And I suppose over the last 4 years, can I say that Ireland has been preparing very much for this day. And digitalization has been one of the cornerstones in our response to Brexit. I've no doubt about it, just as digitalization, smartphones, innovation and broadband played a crucial role in our economic recovery back in 2008. That the new 5G technology will have a similar role to play as our economy recovers from the COVID-19 and the shock of the Brexit exit for the UK. And of course, can I say to you all that 5G is very crucial for our objectives in Ireland for balanced regional development. To me, it's a game changer. It gives us the capacity to live locally and to think globally, and it allows our towns and our communities to survive and to prosper, which is really important for any government. I'm not going to mention too much, I suppose, on the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, but I think it's important to say a few words on, say, in the context of what is happening in accelerating the transition to a digital economy. There's no doubt about it, but the COVID-19 pandemic caused profound socio-economic change. It certainly brought to the fore the central role of digital connectivity and digital technology. During the crisis, our electronic communications sector here in Ireland, it proved very resilient in maintaining the essential delivery services, notwithstanding the extreme pressure that was put on the sector, particularly on the mobile and on the fixed networks, due to the exceptional rise in voice and data traffic. Of course, the existing communication sector was also critical to enable remote working, which we're all now very familiar with. It's very much the norm for indigenous and for many of our multinational companies. We also saw the increase in e-learning, e-education as our schools closed, e-health, which is something I think that's really important as well as e-commerce, as many of our high street stores and our retail services closed during the first pandemic crisis, and there was a huge rise in e-commerce as well. I suppose in Ireland, can I just say to you the one thing I suppose that the crisis did demonstrate, and that was the digital divide, particularly for urban and rural citizens and their ability to access broadband and digital services. I suppose broadband is critical, as we know, and good quality broadband is critical as we move forward. In Ireland, we have 2.4 million premises. We have 3 operators operating on these. They have invested huge sums of money in the region of maybe 3 billion euros over the last 6 years in improving and modernizing their networks. Just give you 3 statistics about Ireland, because I'm asked to talk a little about Ireland and our transition. Back in 2012, only 700,000 premises had broadband, high-speed broadband. That increased to 1.2 million, or 52% of premises in 2016. And at the end of 2019, we were at 1.8 million, which is about 77% of the population. The figure today, I'd say, would be in the region of just over 80%. I think what's important to say here this morning at this workshop is that the state's intervention, our government's intervention, to provide broadband under the national development, under the national broadband plan, has been critical for us in our transition. As many commercial operators that I mentioned focus mainly on the urban areas, and they were unlikely to provide services in rural and remote areas. So it's a bit like picking the low-hanging apples on a tree and leaving somebody else to pick the high-hanging apples. And so the National Broadband Plan is critical for us in digitalisation in Ireland, making high-speed broadband available to every premises, every business in the state, with a minimum of 150 megabytes for private use, and business connections of up to 1 gigabytes. And of course, this will allow our citizens and our businesses to get the maximum benefits of digitalization and through the Internet of Things. The current situation in regards to our broadband is that the contract has been signed. the National Broadband Company have started approximately to 300 broadband community points, which have been selected by our local authorities, so that they can provide free public Wi-Fi and support many digital enterprise hubs in advance of the main deployment of broadband. Contracts worked in the region of about €5 billion, and there are about 540,000 premises to be connected, and work has started on that. I suppose, just say a little bit, I'm not going to go into the technical end of the digital single market, but I think the digital single market is really important for us, and competing that for Ireland is important because it will provide opportunities for our indigenous companies, small to medium enterprises in particular, for new opportunities to new markets, more growth, and of course for us in Ireland, that will mean more jobs. Already we've seen a number of new benefits from the digital single market, including the abolition of roaming, copyright changes, some agreement also in relation to geo-blocking, and other areas, including more secure networks as well. There are some outstanding issues excuse me, that have to be worked out, and for us it's really important in Ireland that we continue to engage with our like-minded countries to ensure that when we do complete the single market, and there are challenges there with because of the different EU regulations in different countries, but what we need is to be an agreement that will be pro-trade, pro-enterprise, pro-innovation, and of course what's really important is pro-consumer. Can I just say briefly to you a little bit about our membership of the D9 Plus? I think the membership of our D9 Plus has been really important for Ireland. This is a group of about 11 countries. They're like-minded digital front-runner countries. It was set up in Sweden, and the focus is very much on the oversight of digital policy, where we exchange best practices together. When I was minister, I had a meeting in Dublin, and I showcased how Ireland had embraced digital technology, including artificial intelligence, and it focused very much on our, I suppose, commitment to the digital agenda. We've talked about SMEs, and of course, SMEs, for like many other countries in Europe, they dominate our landscape, and they're very important for all our economies. And it's important that they're put to the core of any digital transformation because they're very relevant to the Irish economy. In fact, 98% of enterprises in Ireland are SMEs, and they are made up of about 70%. They employ about 70% of the Irish workforce. Ireland, I suppose, is one of the most digitalized countries in Europe. We're 6th in the EU DESI index, and we're ranked 12th out of 126 countries in the global innovation index. But again, you know, the digital economy in Ireland, it has, maybe I would say to you this morning, has two different speeds. Our multinational companies have high levels of digitalization and productivity, and our traditional SMEs are much slower in leveraging digital solutions to reduce costs and drive innovation and expand into new markets both at home and abroad. And I suppose COVID-19 has changed that, but it's something the government were very conscious of. And when I was in government, we commissioned 2 studies on this, the lack on the SMEs and how they could do better. One was done by the European Investment Bank, and the other was done by the OECD, which was a very comprehensive study. And of course, I won't go into detail on them, but it did mention the problems for SMEs in Ireland, like finance, the knowledge gap, and the skills that needed to be, the areas that needed to be filled up. And Ireland has started, our government have now started addressing those issues, particularly in relation to the low digital skills, and to ensure that there is an increase in companies taking up key technology areas. And all this, as I said, has been very useful to the government. In fact, I was talking to a government official yesterday in relation to one aspect of that, because the government have increased the funding, have given grants to SMEs in recent times. And he said to me, particularly in relation to the trading online vouchers, that's where the government gave a sum of money to companies to go online. He said, we've got 6 months of we've got 5 years of applications in the last 6 months. So we are encouraging businesses to link up with the big platforms. In the past, 50% of business that was done online, of purchases online, was 70% of it came from outside of Ireland. Now that figure has been reduced,
whether it's about 50% outside of Europe. So that is helping home industry as well. 5G, well, 5G is extremely important for all of us, and recently, we commissioned a study which was just published. It was done by a research group called Amoric, and it was done on behalf of Huawei Ireland and the Small Firms Association. It was an independent study. It was carried out on 200 SMEs and their likely use of 5G technology. And 57% of those that responded said they would be very willing to use 5G, which would improve their remote working. The report also suggests that companies are aware of that 5G is not just about faster speeds, it's about operational costs, which are very important for all businesses in these challenging times. The study also reveals that companies that want to stay competitive on the international stage must adapt to 5G technology at a very rapid pace. The other part of the survey was carried out in consumers. I won't go too much into depth in that, except that I would say that that consumers are willing to embrace the technology very much indeed. And among the areas which the consumers thought that it would play a very important role was in smart homes, smart cities, and these other areas as well. 5G is starting to roll out in Ireland. We have 3 companies doing it, and it'll be expected to be nationwide in the next few years. So it's very clear from both surveys that the importance of having a world-class 5G network, as it will play a critical role in Ireland's economic recovery, and failure to do so, to invest in 5G technology, could result very much in the loss of up to maybe 12 billion euros to the economy in a period of up to next 6 years or so. So again, I want to thank Huawei, and as Tony Wangu said in the report, 5G has limitless potential and endless possibilities for the consumer. So briefly, to sum up here for our audience this morning, particularly in relation to Ireland, when it comes to technology, Ireland is one of the leaders in this. We are a global technology hub for many of the big multinational companies. In fact, if you look at statistics, 9 of the top 10 software companies are based in the world, are based in Ireland. 9 of the top 10 tech companies are based in Ireland. 14 of the top 16 medical technology companies are based in Ireland, and 10 of the top 10 born on the internet companies are here as well. And you look at the expansions over the last few years, and we have the tech giants like Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, LinkedIn, Airbnb, all announcing jobs every few months and increasing their workforce in Ireland. Recently, TikTok, who came in last year to Ireland with over 100 employees, have announced 1,000 additional jobs. So why are they in Ireland? Well, they're here for a number of reasons. First of all, they're here because we have a very young, talented population. We have a growing reputation of excellence in science. We have a great ability to cooperate with other countries. Our education system, and something I think that will probably be mentioned today, is critical. 50% of the workforce between the age of 25 and 32 have a third level degree, and that's higher than the OECD average. 15% of our workforce are international. Again, that's higher than other EU countries. And we have the third most international workforce in Europe. And of course, we're second highest in Europe in proportion of STEM subjects. That's maths, science, and computing. All that is really important. When it comes to digitalization, we are the second, for a small country with less than 5 million people, we are the second largest exporter of computer and IT tech services in the world. Why? Well, there's huge collaboration, I think, and that's really important. It's a word that I suppose I'll be using a little bit today while I'm with you. There's huge collaboration between the government, the state agencies, the third level institutions, and private industry to accelerate the digital technology. The government have recently announced a new, broken up the Department of Education with another department, the Department of Higher Education and Skills at cabinet level, and huge money has been given to that department because the third level institutions are playing a critical role here. They work with industry very closely. They work with to ensure that our employees have the best education to cater for the type of of jobs we're getting into the country with the transition of digitalization. My own university locally has just put into place a master's degree in AI. And that's something, that's really important. That's been copied by other universities as well. There is a shortage of software engineers in Ireland, and that's why, we want to ensure that the third level institutions are going to ensure that there are more places for these students. I suppose the only thing I will say to you is we're also, I suppose, making it attractive for our Irish diaspora to come back to Ireland. People that have done really well in Silicon Valley, China and other areas to come back and use their talent in Ireland, so as to continue for us as a government and for Ireland to continue to attract the multinational companies, to have one of the best education systems in the world, to ensure that we have the talent for for the change that's coming in digital technology. They say that that a person born today will probably be working in the next 10 to 15 years in a job that hasn't yet been invented. So, we're going to continue to work with Europe on the next stage of Europe's transformation, including areas of artificial intelligence, blockchain, supercomputing, etc., to continue to attract foreign direct investment into our country. And of course, moreover, to ensure that we have more entrepreneurs, that we have a top-class education system, that we have a top-class innovation centres out there, to ensure that we are and will be one of the fastest growing economies in Europe. So, Paul, I'll leave it at that. COVID-19 plans have set things back a little. The government will be preparing, publishing a new artificial intelligence strategy and a digital strategy in the new year, and we'll have more about that when that is published.
Thank you, Pat. That was fascinating. The more you were speaking, the more questions I had. So it was very frustrating that I was making this long list of questions to ask you. We have questions also from the audience, but let me briefly ask you at least one question from my side. You set out very clearly in a very impressive way the impressive position of Ireland in global rankings, not just European rankings. This number 12 slot is quite remarkable, and the ingredients which explain and describe that success. But maybe the question is begged at the same time, Patrick, is how confident are you, is the Irish government, of maintaining basically this kind of competitive advantage? It's not just for the well-being, right, of the local economy. How do you have other European member states trying to follow your example and maybe catching up?
Well, I suppose our agencies, both Enterprise Ireland and IDA, Enterprise Ireland helps indigenous business, and there's very much a tech focus now in their emphasis with the small SMEs and the micro enterprises they're working with. The IDA are, constantly attracting new companies into Ireland. It's actually amazing, Paul, that 70% of the jobs numbers, that the increased job numbers, the additional job numbers last year were from existing companies. So for us in Ireland, it's really important that we nurture these companies to ensure that they continue to grow and to invest. And that's why the collaboration between our government and the third level institutions and the multinational industries is extremely important. So I'm confident from the plans the government are putting into place. The government have a plan for the next 10 years, and technology and the transition to digital technology is very much part of the government plans, and the necessary funding also will be put into place. But I think it's really important to focus in on education and to encourage more entrepreneurs as well.
Right, we have time for one question from the audience, Patrick, before you have to leave us. A question from a gentleman called Ad Van Loon, who's the general counsel of something called the QIY Foundation, which I'm told is a non-profit foundation creating the new internet, on which the individual has control over his personal data. And that question is as follows, Patrick. How important is the data sharing policy for accelerating the transition to a digital economy? Do you know if this has ever been quantified?
Well, I suppose the one thing I think that was very important for us in Ireland, first of all, and I didn't mention it in my presentation, was GDPR. I think GDPR was really important when it came in May 2 years ago for Ireland, to ensure that data is secure, which is really important, and that you have your privacy is respected in that as well. Ireland is, a centre of excellence for many data centres. They say about 38% of data in Europe is stored stored in Irish data centres. And data sharing is very important. It's very much part of the digital single market, and it is important for us, I think, particularly for the smaller countries. But at the same time, I think we need to respect that as well. But that's something, I suppose, that'll be worked out in the future as time evolves.
Okay, well, we have to move on. It's been fascinating, Patrick. Very much enjoyed talking to you, but we have to move on. Thank you very much for your time. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our next keynote presentation by Mario Grotz. Mario is the chairman of Lux Innovation and head of directorate for infrastructure and technology at the Luxembourg Ministry of Economy and Foreign Trade. Over to you, Mario. We haven't got the sound. We're going to try and get the sound back, Mario.
I think, yeah, Mario, are you on mute there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Mario. Yeah,
okay, great. Thank you. So it's really a pleasure for me to participate here as a speaker to this very interesting workshop. I also listened very carefully to what my colleague from Ireland said, and there are a lot of similarities between our both countries. I think we are both small countries, even if Luxembourg is a lot smaller than Ireland is, but I definitely see a lot of similarities between the policy which is developed in Ireland and also the policy we try to implement here in Luxembourg. It is definitely true that digital platforms and also the convergence of digital technologies are transforming our lives, the way we communicate, the way we work, and the way we live. So I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share with you some insights on the Luxembourg strategy, and maybe also highlighting the importance of digital innovation in this context. I will try to focus on two main points in my presentation. First of all, I think it's important to give you some information on the current positioning of Luxembourg. I think Luxembourg is quite well positioned also in the European context. So I will try to give you some information on that, and then later on I will give you some more information on the strategy itself, how we are going to implement a strategy for a competitive and sustainable economy here in Luxembourg. Maybe we'll move to the next slide. And so how is Luxembourg positioned in Europe in an ever more connected and digital world? Of course, geographically, we're quite well positioned. We're really in the heart of Europe, but also strategically, we're quite well positioned. Luxembourg plays a strategic role also in the European Union. Of course, we are best known because we are a leading financial center focusing mainly on private banking and on investment funds. But Luxembourg is a leading investment fund industry in Europe and is worldwide #2 immediately after New York. It's also worthwhile mentioning that we are home of the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. But it's more important to say that Luxembourg is much more than just a purely financial hub. It is really a vibrant European economic hub for many other types of activities. And I would like just to give you some examples of such activities. One good example is the space sector. Luxembourg is today, for instance, the home of SES, which is the largest satellite communication operator today. And I think we're are probably the most attractive European ecosystems for new space activities. Second example could be the logistics sector. There also, I think we invested huge amounts in infrastructure over the last years, and we succeeded to evolve over the last decade into a leading European logistics hub integrated in global supply chains. But finally, and this is not very well known probably to the general public, it is a fact also that Luxembourg is today the digital backbone or the digital pole of the European Union. To the next slide, please. Yes. In fact, many of the data of the European Commission is stored and treated in Luxembourg in our highly secured data centers. Under its digital pole, the European Commission is locating many of its digital services in Luxembourg. The aim is really to develop a critical mass of knowledge and expertise here in Luxembourg. The digital services are mainly focusing here on 3 priority areas. It is on digital infrastructure, it is on the data economy, on the modernization, public servicing, and finally also in the digital solutions. So the overall aim of the digital pole is really to evolve over the coming a decade into a true European Commission, to true center of excellence in that respect, providing therefore also an important contribution to the digital single market to Europe. Go to the next slide, please. So another and the last piece to the puzzle, which recently has been added to the digital pole, is the European High Performance Computing Joint Undertaking, or also called Euro HPC, which is a public-private partnership in high performance computing. This joint undertaking has started its activities here in Luxembourg in November 2018 and will remain operational until the end of 2026. Today, Luxembourg hosts its executive agency here. Besides this, Luxembourg also successfully participated in a co-procurement call for Euro HPC for HPC capacity. Following that call, a 10 petaflop machine will be installed in Luxembourg in the premises of LuxProvide, which is a private company acting as a host entity. And I think this also really demonstrates again very well that through such investments, Luxembourg is willing to stay at the forefront of technology. Next slide. So it's not really by chance that Luxembourg has been selected as a digital pole for the European Commission. It's also not by chance that Luxembourg has been selected from Euro HPC as one of the hosting countries for an HPC machine. I think since beginning of 2000, the Luxembourg government has done its homework by having invested heavily, mainly in digital infrastructures, in connectivity and data storage. The result today is really that we have a top-notch IT infrastructure, also paired with the highly skilled workforce. I would just like to mention 2 recent studies where you can see how Luxembourg is positioned also internationally. And I think Luxembourg is always mentioned in these studies as one of the digital frontrunners in Europe. Starting with one study from the Bain Consulting Group, which you can see on this slide. And there are 2 main takeaways from this study. I think the Bain Consulting Group, on the one hand, has identified Luxembourg as one of the digital frontrunners with the most significant potential for digital enabled growth. And the second takeaway is that the Bain Consulting Group also has identified Luxembourg as having the second largest pool of digital data workers needed to accelerate its digital and data economy growth ambitions. So I think this is a very crucial element, knowing that digital skills are the main drivers for economic growth. We can move to the next slide. So I would also like to mention a second study, which is, of course, a very well-known study. It is a study on digital economy and society index, the famous DESI index. This index monitors the overall digital performance of Europe and tracks also the progress of EU countries in their digital competitiveness. And here also you can see that Luxembourg consistently is ranked in the top 5 European countries and is far above the average in Europe when it comes to digitalization. Next slide, please. I will move to the second part of the presentation, which is more focusing on our current vision and strategy for a competitive and sustainable economy. First, we started with publishing a strategy, data-driven innovation strategy in 2018. This strategy document already fully embraced the digital transition and it was mainly recognizing innovation and data as key drivers for future economic growth. In fact, this strategy gives a vision and a path forward to shape the digital data economy. The main challenge, in fact, consists of enabling the use of these general purpose digital technologies such as artificial intelligence coupled with Internet of Things, smart components, systems and networks, HPC and big data in order to drive future growth. This document also confirms the multi-specialization strategy which we had put in place already several years before, meaning that we're focusing on a very small numbers of specific sectors in order to achieve critical mass in these sectors. And on the slide, you can see the different sectors we're concentrating on. It's, of course, on sectors which are quite well known: Industry 4.0, health tech, logistics, space, financial technologies. But even in these sectors, we're only concentrating on some specific areas, sub-areas of these sectors where we really want to achieve critical mass. The important is that we see the ICT not here as a sector, but we see it really as a transversal competence which we really need in order to develop the different sectorial priorities of the Luxembourg government. Just to give you, for example, some examples on the next slides, how really the use of data will, in our eyes, revolutionize all priority sectors I have mentioned on the slide. One example is, of course, on big data coupled with blockchain and AI, which will for sure make logistic processes more resilient. Another example is on the space data. So coupling space data with terrestrial data sources will definitely lead to new services and products in many economic areas. Fintech also, as Luxembourg is a European financial hub, I think fintech is a very important element of our strategy. Fintech already today is one of the fastest adopter of digital technologies and data technologies, and for sure is a game changer in the whole financial world. And one last example is IoT and artificial intelligence coupled with also high-performance computing will definitely also lead to more efficient manufacturing processes, so in Industry 4.0. Now, what are the main elements, the main areas of our strategy? The strategy is really focusing on three main areas, three actions. The first is boosting the digital economy, and my Irish colleague talked a lot about 5G. This, of course, is also one important element of our strategy, and we have a clear plan in order to have a full coverage of 5G until 2022 for Luxembourg. So this first pillar of our strategy is really on the upgrade of the digital infrastructures. We are today already very well positioned, but we need to make sure that we continue investments in this area. The second pillar of the strategy is really on accelerate experimentation of new advanced digital technologies through support for platforms and testbed. So it's really about supporting or educating our companies to experiment with these new general purpose technologies. This is really important. I think we really need to help the companies to use these technologies in a more efficient way in the future. And the third pillar of the strategy is on implementing a strong regulatory and investment framework. And here a good example of what we're doing is really trying to implement, in some cases, in testbeds, the concept of sandboxes. If you go to the next slide, we have over the last months, and also taking into account the lessons learned from the COVID crisis, and also the ambition and priorities announced by the new European Commission, we have reworked and also completed this strategy, which we have published in 2018. And today we are in the final elaboration phase of a new strategic paper, which will, of course, be based on our strategic paper from 2018. But as I said before, which also take the lessons learned from the COVID crisis and also the ambition of the European Commission. So there, the idea is really that Luxembourg should be one of the first European Union member states who will try to align with the digital union goals from climate neutrality by 2050 and by global leadership of its digital revolution. And we think we could manage to integrate these two twin goals into one single transformative national strategy. At least that is our ambition. So the aim is really to build on existing digital strengths in order to tackle future environmental or societal challenges. Can go to the next slide, please. So, as I said before, the strategy has not yet been adopted by government. It will be adopted in January, but I already wish to give you some insight on the different building blocks in that strategy. On this slide, you can see that the strategy is trying to be comprehensive, and today has foreseen to have 6 building blocks. There are 3 more vertical building blocks, and there are 3 more transversal building blocks in strategy. I will very fast go through these building blocks without going now too much into detail. So first building block will be on the acceleration of the digitized economy for societal benefits, and societal benefits is very important. The aim is really here to invest in digital technologies, digital solutions, and digital infrastructure addressing the most important future societal needs. And again, we are focusing on our priority areas: health tech, mobility, resilient supply chains, so logistics and maybe energy and other things. We're really trying to continue to focus on the main areas. The second building block is on driving the digitally enabled circular economy. So here the aim is really also to use digitalization and digital technologies to make processes, products, and services more circular. Third building blocks is on strategic value chains. So I think from COVID crisis, we learned the importance of strategic value chains. And we try through this new strategy also to identify the relevant strategic value chain for Luxembourg and the greater region, and also to work then on this value chain. Very important here is also the opportunity for reshoring industrial activities again to Luxembourg. And then we have 3 transversal blocks, and I will not insist on these blocks. I think just to mention them, it's really enabling a secure, trusted data economy transformation. It's really building blocks is really the keywords are really sovereignty, trust, resilience, and security of data storage. Second block there, transversal block, is really on ensuring a sustainable digital transition. What we see today is that the rapid digitalization of industry and society has also led to a dramatic increase of ICT direct energy footprint. And we would like to develop digital solutions for energy efficiency in industry. And the last very traditional building block is really to build a supportive investment environment. We all know that traditional instruments will not work in the future, and that we have to, if we want to finance innovation, we have to reshape our financial instruments. So we go to the next slide. I would not like to end my speech without also insisting on the importance of the European initiative. It's not because of the money of the European initiatives, but it's because of the international partnership which this initiative allowed to create. And this really is core for the competitiveness of our country and also for the entire whole European Union. So to summarize, and I'm coming to the conclusion of my presentation, the strategy we're really trying to implement is focused on 3 main areas. The idea is, on the one side, to consolidate our position, and you may go to the next and last slide. The idea is really to consolidate our position as a front runner in the data economy in the European Union. Second point is really to leverage our digital competencies to position Luxembourg as a future European leader in the sustainable green transition. And the last point is really to accelerate these developments through strategic and effective collaborations and partnership in Europe. So this is a very brief overview about the strategy. I really thank you for having me on this panel and having the opportunity to give you some insight on the Luxembourg strategy. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mario. We have time for a quick question from me before you have to leave us. So Luxembourg is not one of the largest member states in the European Union. We know that. You mentioned that at the very beginning. So given the size of the country, what's the pros and cons of being the size of Luxembourg, and what lessons could, in terms of developing the digital economy you've been talking about, and what lessons could other European member states learn from your experience?
You're right that the size of our countries, there are advantages and disadvantages. I think very clearly the advantages is that Luxembourg is very flexible and very agile, and the decision-taking process definitely is more straightforward in Luxembourg than probably in other countries. So if we really think that we need to go for a strategic action, we can be very, very fast in implementing this. Now, the disadvantage is, of course, that we are small, and in some sectors we are lacking the critical mass. So that is very difficult for us. Therefore, I also insisted on this European partnerships. This really allows us to participate, nevertheless, in more important initiative on the European level. But sometimes it's very difficult on the national level to really implement a strategy when you only have a few actors who are really participating in this area.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and your fascinating presentation. We're now going to take a short break. We'll be reconvening at 10 o'clock CET. Where we'll have our first panel discussion after these keynote presentations. So come back at 10 o'clock prompt, and we'll start the panel discussion. Thank you very much for your time.